Hello and welcome to Spring 2021. That's right. Over the weekend, it became spring. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Pete Dominick. This is episode 315 of Stand Up. Joining me today, comedian, cultural commentator, lawyer, the great JL Cauvin. I am Pete Dominick. It's time to stand up with me right now. Stand up. Well, hello, folks, and welcome to episode 315 of Stand Up Daily, where every weekday I drop a new episode of Stand Up that recaps the major news of the day before in the last 24, usually welcomes two guests who are experts in their fields, or at least very interesting, entertaining, and intelligent cultural commentators like today's comedian and lawyer JL Cauvin. On today's show, I'll also share a message from longtime listener, stand-up subscriber, and a guy who has become a really good friend over the years, Jason Meux. The message was meant to be private, but I got Jay's permission to share it with y'all because I think it was really good. Great guy. And in case you're new to this podcast, I want to say, first of all, welcome to the show. Tell your friends about us. Give a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, because apparently that matters. I have spent over 20 years in entertainment and political media, as well as covering and participating in different activist movements, sometimes actually covering and being in the movement. Like when I covered the Rally for Sanity with Colbert and Stewart. I had just left Comedy Central, where I was working at the Colbert Report for like 6 years, and I was working at CNN now, and they said, well, you'd be uniquely equipped to cover the rally in Washington, D.C., which I did, but I got so caught up in it all because it was so much fun that I basically was like part of it and partying with all the people, and they called me into the CNN van, and I don't know, I forget which, some legal guy gets on, he's like, Pete, remember, you are covering the event, you're not part of the event. You're not in the event. You're covering the event. And I said, Rick, remember, I'm a comedian, not a journalist. What were you looking for here? I mean, you want this to be entertaining, right? There's a reason you didn't send the Wolf to cover the Colbert-Stewart rally, right? Not sure that was the best response, but it was a lot of fun. Anyway, after almost 14 years at SiriusXM, CNN, MSNBC, I am now podcasting from my shed, and I'm loving it. And according to many of you who've been listening to me for most of my career, apparently I'm doing my best work ever. So thank you. I've interviewed hundreds, maybe thousands of policy experts over the years, scholars, authors, activists, artists, performers of every art, from journalists, scientists, all around, thought-provoking humans who I've learned so much from. We've learned so much from. And I've learned along the way with the audience of the show, and we still are. We're still learning, this time from the shed in podcast form. I am so happy to have you along for the journey, and because of all these folks, knowing these folks and becoming friends with many of them, I am the booker for the show as well. I also love talking and asking people questions, and usually pretty good at it, so I host the show. I learned to edit, post, and do my best to promote the show as well. Bottom line is, Stand Up is a one-man production from the shed, the solar-powered shed here in Rockland County, New York. The program is supported by over 800 paying subscribers. The goal is to get to 3,000 so I can hire someone more than my fake producer, Keith, to help me make the show even better, free up some more time for me to be in the garden and do such things with family while still delivering an even better lineup of programming for you. I want to do more podcasts. I want to go live. I want to do YouTube, video, you name it. The show is free, but it's my full-time gig now, so it's not cheap. And it's for that reason I'm asking you to support the program with a paid subscription for $5 or more American dollars. Go to patreon.com or just click on the paid subscription link in the show notes and get all the benefits of membership, the best of which is being part of this really cool community of super thoughtful, curious, passionate, talented folks. Okay, it's been a while since I opened with a hard promo and resetting of what I am doing here. But in case you forgot, in case you're new people, to create some context of what I'm doing each and every day, there you go. Now it's time to do the show. And I open every show with a recap of the last 24 hours in news. In this case, okay, it's Monday, so I just go over some things that happened on the weekend and often on the Sunday shows. Number one, it became spring over the weekend. I hope you got outside. Send me your vitamin N pictures, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Send those vitamin N nature photos to prove you got outside. Getting outside is everything. I hope you got some over the weekend. And the president and vice president went down to Atlanta to talk with Asian American leaders following the horrific shooting last week. The CDC cut distance guidelines for students from 6 feet to 3 feet, and the Biden administration surpassed the goal of 100 million COVID-19 vaccines on Friday, marking his 58th day in office as well. Given the 7-day average in new reported doses, the U.S. currently on pace to have roughly 50% of the population vaccinated by May, according to Axios. Not as good news in European countries. They're not doing as well, seeing potential fourth wave. I'll get into that with some of the audio from the experts on the Sunday shows. Miami Beach declared a state of emergency and set a curfew amid COVID-19 fears. The defense secretary went to Afghanistan, and the NCAA women's basketball tournament kicked off. The men's basketball tournament continued to the round of 32. But I want to start before all that. I've got a bunch of sound for you today. A really robust segment. I was feeling guilty that I only had one guest, even though I had an almost 1 hour long conversation with JL Cauvin, which is great. But I wanted to give you as much to learn here at the top. I learned a lot putting it together. I always enjoy that. And one thing I learned was over the weekend, there were horrific storms in Australia, where parts of the country declared natural disaster during some calling it once in 100 years. I've heard once in 50 years floods. Heavy rains pummeling the country's east, bringing the worst floods in a generation. And because my BFF, David Campbell, the co-host of Australia's Today Show, he's also a very talented performer, singer, and now children's book author, but he's covering this for Channel 9 in Australia, where he is the co-host of the Today Show. He and I talk like all the time on the Polo app every day pretty much, and so I asked him to give me a bit of a dispatch, if you will, about what the hell is happening in Australia. Where did you see the video of a house floating down? I don't know if it was a river or what it was, but here it is. Stand Up with Pete Dominic, Australia correspondent from Sydney. Here's at David Campbell 73, who is emptying out his lawn with buckets of water. It's been on duty all weekend long, just trying to make sure his house doesn't drown.
This is a 1 in 50 year, Pete, event. What has happened is it's like multiple storms have like come together into this sort of mega storm sort of situation here. It's the worst flooding that a lot of people have seen in 20 years. And a lot of the areas that have been affected is mainly in New South Wales and then southeast Queensland. So it goes over 2 states in Australia. There's been over 100, 150 mils of rain in a lot of these areas. It's continuing over the next few days. It has been really, really, really bad. About, I think, 15 to 18,000 people have been evacuated from a lot of these areas already. A lot of these areas are low-lying areas. They're farming areas. They're areas of people who are used to a bit of flooding, but they've seen nothing like this. We also have a huge dam here called the Warragamba Dam in New South Wales, which is basically the source of all of our water, which in the last few years has, in drought conditions, has been extremely low. But in the last, 12 months has been at like in the high 90 percentile. This has tipped it over the edge. It has been spilling out every 24 hours since this storm cell started, about the equivalent of Sydney Harbour every day. So therefore, the low-lying areas around it are in danger. There's a lot of rivers, 2 major rivers, the Nepean and the Hawkesbury, which are affected by this, which are rising up and flooding towns. There are whole towns underwater. There are businesses going under. There was a whole house that just floated downstream the other day. It has been a catastrophic event for a lot of people here, much worse than I guess we even predicted when we saw these rains coming. And we are still in the middle of it now. It is still raining here now. Where I am, it's quite light, but I know it's much heavier as you go inland, and it's going to be down on the south coast of New South Wales. They're expecting a potential of 300 millimetres in the next 24 to 48 hours. That could be devastating again. I'll keep you up to date into what's happening.
All right, that is my BFF, David Campbell, down in Australia. And I hate it when he uses millimeters and centimeters and the metric system. It's really super confusing, but a great, helpful dispatch from him. I'd get a big kick out of it if you are on Twitter and you mentioned that you heard his update. He is at David Campbell 73 at David Campbell. He's also great on Instagram. He does really great videos over there. He's written a children's book. Anyway, I appreciate him doing that. And I now want to move on. And folks, you can't teach stupid. And of course, young people are stupid by our design, aren't we? Well, a lot of them covered the beach in South Florida over the weekend. And every time I see this, I instantly start thinking about all of the frontline workers, especially nurses and doctors, that have to deal with the aftermath. And it got so crazy that the police had to break up crowds with rubber bullets. Here is the mayor of Miami Beach, Dan Gelber, who declared state of emergency and a curfew during a press conference Saturday.
You know, our city is one of the few destinations that are open nationally. Most other places are closed. Most other places might be too cold or both. So we're getting an enormous amount of people here, more than we can handle. Too many are coming really without the intention of following the rules. And the result has been a level of chaos and disorder that is just something more than we can endure. It's gotten worse every single day. So we declared an 8 p.m. curfew. We'll be closing our causeways other than to local traffic coming into our island city at 9 p.m. every night for the next few nights. We just needed to do it as a safety measure. And of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic, which makes things even more challenging.
So that was pretty insane news and videos to see coming out of Miami Beach over the weekend. And over on CBS's Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan asked Dr. Scott Gottlieb about this.
When it comes to B117, the variant first detected in the UK, Dr. Fauci said this week it's about 30% of U.S. infections. And it's, 50% more transmissible. It's also potentially more lethal. When you see these pictures of these spring break gatherings in Florida and elsewhere, does that make you rethink your projections here and worry about a fourth wave?
Well, I don't think we're going to have a fourth wave. I think what we're seeing around the country is parts of the country that are plateauing, and we're seeing upticks in certain parts of the country. I think the fact that we have so much prior infection, 120 million Americans have been infected with this virus, the fact that we've now vaccinated, we've gotten one shot in at least 70 million Americans, even if you account for the fact that maybe about 30% of the people being vaccinated previously had COVID, we're talking about some form of protective immunity in about 55% of the population. So there's enough of a backstop here that I don't think you're going to see a fourth surge. I think what you could see is a plateauing for a period of time before we continue on a downward decline, in large part because B117 is becoming more prevalent, in large part because we're pulling back too quickly with respect to taking off our masks and lifting the mitigation. But I still don't think that it's going to be enough to create a true fourth wave. If you look at in Europe where they're having a true fourth wave, they've only vaccinated one in 9 adults. Here in the U.S., we've vaccinated 1 in 3. In the U.K., which is seeing consistent declines, they've vaccinated 1 in 2. So the vaccination is going to be a backstop. And we're continuing to vaccinate about 3 million people a day right now.
I thought that was really interesting statistics and data. Folks, I listen to the Sunday shows, so you don't have to. But let's stay with CBS's Face the Nation, because host Margaret Brennan had former Operation Warp Speed advisor Dr. Moncef Slaoui on her program, and she asked him about that dust-up between Rand Paul and Anthony Fauci and whether you should wear a mask if you've been vaccinated and all of that. Here it is.
The response to the virus continues to be a political issue. This week, Senator Rand Paul mocked Dr. Fauci for continuing to mask after he was vaccinated.
If we're not spreading the infection, isn't it just theater?
No, it's not.
The vaccine and you're wearing 2 masks. Isn't that theater?
No, that's not. Here we go again with the theater.
Do you think people who've been vaccinated need to still wear masks?
I do think as long as the herd immunity levels have not yet been attained, that people who have been vaccinated should continue wearing a mask when in public and in crowded areas, because what we don't know yet is whether the vaccine prevents replication of the virus. It's an act of, frankly, civility, I would say, vis-a-vis the people around us who have not yet been vaccinated. So, yes.
All right. Moncef Slaoui backing up Dr. Anthony Fauci. Also, Margaret Brennan asked him about how his feelings were now looking back at his time serving the Trump administration. I thought that was a pretty interesting question and answer and wanted to share that with you.
Do you feel like you were stigmatized for having worked for the Trump administration?
With time, the one thing I want to focus on is I feel extremely fortunate to have been able to help and participate to allow us to have vaccine and control this pandemic. That's the only thing that counts. There were moments, frankly, where I told myself, oh my God, why did I get myself into this? But they never lasted long because the mission is way more important than those emotional moments. I do believe that it's a mistake to politicize a health issue. It's a big mistake. Many people probably have died or suffered because the whole situation became so political that, emotions overtook rationality.
I don't know that it was emotions. I think it was ruthless, raw strategy about how to try to win people over, win their minds and hearts and votes over. But I'm not as generous as Dr. Moncef Slaoui. And far less diplomatic. All right, now let's head over to MSNBC. My favorite weekend host, Ali Velshi, who is on this podcast last week. Look for that video coming out at youtube.com/standupwithpete. I'll try to get that up this week. And he had Dr. Lippy Roy. She is a physician and always a great communicator, and asked her if we could change our behavior. Is it time to rest? You know, given all these scary new variants that spread faster and further potentially?
That may be more contagious. What's your best advice for people right now?
Short answer, Ali, this pandemic is not over. It really isn't. We are now at, 540,000 lives lost in this country. We are still averaging, even though cases had been coming down nicely in January, even up to early February, they've now plateaued. So we're averaging 50 to 60,000 new infections every day. And to your point, these new variants, the UK variant B117 now accounts for 20 to 30% of cases in the United States. COVID cases in the United States. This is concerning because the UK variant is more transmissible. It's been associated with higher disease severity and death. So, but the good news, though, Ali, is that we are vaccinating. We have really ramped up vaccination rates. And so I do feel that cases will go down, but not without people behaving in a way that's conducive to public health guidelines, masking and distancing. That we need people to help out and follow these guidelines for a little bit longer.
Follow these guidelines for just a little bit longer and get vaccinated as soon as you can, right? Isn't that the strategy, the goal? I hope we're all on the same page. All right, let's move on from COVID to democracy. Can't go an episode of the podcast without talking the threat to our democracy in the way of rolling back voter rights 50 years. You know, Senate Democrats represent 41 million more Americans than Republicans do, but Mitch McConnell wants 41 Republican senators representing just 21% of the country to be able to filibuster laws that will bring back these voting rights that were so hard fought won. And I love Senator Raphael Warnock and the job that he is already doing in the U.S. Senate. Here he is from a Senate floor speech sometime last week. This isn't technically part of the last 24, but I love it.
We are witnessing right now a massive and unabashed assault on voting rights, unlike anything we've ever seen since the Jim Crow era. This is Jim Crow in new clothes. Since the January election, some 250 voter suppression bills have been introduced by state legislatures all across the country, from Georgia to Arizona, from New Hampshire to Florida, using the big lie of voter fraud as a pretext for voter suppression. The same big lie that led to a violent insurrection on this very Capitol the day after my election. Within 24 hours, we elected Georgia's first African-American Jewish senator, and hours later, the Capitol was assaulted We see in just a few precious hours the tension very much alive in the soul of America. And the question before all of us at every moment is, what will we do to push us in the right direction? And so politicians driven by that big lie aim to severely limit and in some cases eliminate automatic and same-day voter registration, mail-in and absentee voting, and early voting and weekend voting. They want to make it easier to purge voters from the voting roll altogether. And as a voting rights activist, I've seen up close just how draconian these measures can be. I hail from a state that purged 200,000 voters from the roll one Saturday night. In the middle of the night. We know what's happening here. Some people don't want some people to vote.
Some people don't want some people to vote. I love Senator Raphael Warnock. I think he's doing a great job already. He was on Meet the Press on Sunday with Chuck Todd, who asked him about the attacks on the massage parlors and hate crimes across the country. I thought this was interesting and a good answer from Senator Warnock. Here it is.
Is there a necessary legislative response here? Is this President Biden said, look, we got to change our heart. And there's no doubt there's a morality aspect to this. But is there a legislative change you'd like to see make? Is it reporting in hate crimes, gun reform, police reform?
Well, I've long pushed for hate crimes laws here in the state of Georgia. It took entirely too long to get one on the books here. But thankfully, we do have that law on the books right now. In addition to that, we need reasonable gun reform in our country. This shooter was able to kill all of these folks the same day he purchased a firearm. But right now, what is our legislature doing? They're busy under the Gold Dome here in Georgia trying to prevent people from being able to vote the same day they register. I think that suggests a distortion in values. When you can buy a gun and create this much carnage and violence on the same day. But if you want to exercise your right to vote as an American citizen, the same legislature that should be focused on this is busy erecting barriers to that constitutional right.
All right, let me head over to another Sunday show and another issue that got a lot of attention. The Department of Homeland Security, President Biden's Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, I think, was on at least 3, if not 4, of the Sunday shows being grilled about the, quote, crisis at the border. Martha Raddatz of ABC News was actually broadcasting on the border, and here's a little bit of the back and forth she had with him.
I know you're trying to get that message out now, but your team was also briefed by career professionals at DHS during the transition about the possibility of this crisis. You yourself say we are on pace to have one of the largest migrant surges in 20 years. Why were you not prepared for this?
Martha, let me be clear. We have seen large numbers of migration in the past. We know how to address it. We have a plan. We are executing on our plan, and we will succeed. This is what we do. But one thing is also clear, that it takes time. And why does it take time now? Why is it especially challenging and difficult now? Because the entire system under United States law that has been in place throughout administrations of both parties was dismantled in its entirety by the Trump administration. So we are rebuilding the system as we address the needs of vulnerable children who arrive at our borders. And that is what it is
Mr. Secretary,
all about. It is about
you knew
vulnerable
this coming
children.
in.
All right, there was a lot of that on the Sunday shows, and that is obviously a very complex issue. I highly recommend, if you're interested in learning more and wanting to understand and make arguments about the immigration issue, that you look up 2013 Senate immigration bill. Go ahead, look it up, see what was in it, and see why it did not pass. It passed out of the Senate, and then it went to the House, which was then led by Speaker John Boehner. He never took it up for a vote because he was worried it would pass. Billions in border security, a pathway to citizenship for the Dreamers, job issues, job-related issues, so much for comprehensive immigration reform passed out of a very divided Senate with several Republicans, I think 10 Republicans voting for it, and then it died a cold, grisly death in the House, and we're still arguing about it. We could have made so much progress in the last 7 years. And the reason why you can't get comprehensive immigration reform in the United States of America, and I am sorry, but it is the truth, because you can look at all the special interests on this major issue, and there really aren't any that don't want comprehensive immigration reform. All of the big industries and employers want it. Religious institutions want it. So why don't we have comprehensive immigration reform, a major bill with all kinds of new rules, regulations, funding, and resources, from security to more, all of these important issues? Why can't we have it? Because it's a huge wedge issue, and because, frankly, a lot of white Americans don't want to see more brown Americans in America. Let me now go back to the issue of the hate crime, what is being called a hate crime by many, that took place down in Atlanta. Like I said, Joe Biden went down there with Kamala Harris over the weekend. Here he is.
The investigation is ongoing, and the Vice President and I are being regularly updated by the Attorney General and the Director of the FBI, working closely with Governor Kemp and Mayor Bottoms and local officials. But whatever the motivation, we know this. Too many Asian Americans have been walking up and down the streets and worrying, waking up each morning the past year feeling their safety and the safety of their loved ones are at stake. They've been attacked, blamed, scapegoated, and harassed. They've been verbally assaulted, physically assaulted, killed. Documented incidents of hate against Asian Americans have seen a skyrocketing spike over the last year, let alone the ones that happened and never get reported. It's been a year of living in fear for their lives, just to walk down the street. Grandparents are afraid to leave their homes. Small business owners targeted and gunned down. Attacks on some of the most vulnerable people in our nation, the elderly, low-wage workers, and women. In fact, Asian American women suffer twice as many incidents of harassment and violence as Asian American men. We're learning again what we've always known. Words have consequences.
Then he fell on the stairs. Martha Raddatz had Congresswoman Judy Chu on. She is the first Chinese American woman ever elected to Congress. And she said, what can be done? What can be done?
You want Congress to act and have singled out two bills, the No Hate Act and the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act. Can you first explain for our viewers what these bills would do? And secondly, are you confident they can get enough Republican support to become law?
Well, first of all, let me say that we have been working for a year to try to get some action done against these anti-Asian hate crimes. But President Trump doubled down with his rhetoric about the China virus and the Wuhan virus and even Kung flu. And it wasn't until President Biden came and issued that executive memorandum saying that the Asian community should be able to meet with the Department of Justice to provide solutions to these anti-Asian hate crimes that we were able to actually move forward. And in fact, we had a meeting with the Department of Justice last week. We are also pushing forward two.
Go ahead.
And we're also pushing forward, of course, these two hate crime bills. One is called the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act. And this one would direct the Department of Justice to have somebody appointed to track these crimes and to make sure that they are going through the system and being prosecuted and providing guidelines on these types of hate crimes in terms of their prosecution. The No Hate Act would address our very flawed hate crime system in this country. Our reporting is very flawed because it relies on local law enforcement agencies to voluntarily provide such statistics. But 18 states don't even track such data. 3 states don't even have a hate crime statute in the law. So hate crimes in this country are very undercounted, And also, the No Hate Act would provide resources for law enforcement to be able to put such a program together and actually get training on how they deal with hate crimes, and provide oversight that would be done by the U.S. Attorney General, who would report to Congress.
Congresswoman Judy Chu on ABC's This Week with Martha Raddatz. Let's go back to CBS, where on 60 Minutes last night, Scott Pelley was interviewing and making a lot of headlines during his interview with the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Michael Sherwin, who is investigating the insurrection and potential charges of sedition for the insurrectionist. Scott Pelley asked him to clear up the question of whether some in the crowd were anti-Trumpers or Antifa. And what were their plans?
Defenders of the president have said that what you see at the Capitol are left-wing extremists posing as Trump supporters. Has your investigation found any evidence?
No, that's false. That's false.
Categorically false.
That's categorically false. The great balance of those individuals are affiliated with, obviously, Trump supporters and some militia groups, right-wing militia groups. Very few. There were a couple people arrested related to that affiliate with some left-wing groups, but I could count on one hand. One hand, those individuals, maybe less than 5, and we're talking 390 on the other side of the ledger. So, yeah, that's false information, Scott.
Is there evidence that anyone sought to kill or capture the vice president or any member of Congress?
So, look, there were social media postings, obviously very negative related to Pence. We're still trying to discern what the actual objective was. Obviously, as we've articulated in the court documents, to obstruct Congress, obstruct the count, and they've been charged with that. But, look, I think the troubling thing is, was there another nefarious objective? And as you may know, gallows were put up outside the Capitol. Maybe it was symbolic, but, I think that's critical and a scary fact. And gallows were put up, day of the rope, like from the Turner Diaries. Was this going to be day of the rope? Did people really think that they were going to pull out politicians and put them on trial? I don't know. We see those images. We see the gallows being put up, and we're still trying to discern what was the actual objective.
Michael Sherwin then went on to talk about some of the details about where they are so far in their investigation. I was really impressed with the way that this guy was clearly taking this seriously and communicating it effectively on 60 Minutes last night. Here it is.
As looking 8-9 weeks out from the events, we're over 400 criminal cases, which is a pretty amazing number, I think, in a very limited time frame.
400 defendants.
Correct, 400 defendants. And the bulk of those cases are federal criminal charges and significant federal felony charges, 5, 10, 20-year penalties. Of those 400 cases, the majority of those, 80, 85%, maybe even 90, you have individuals both inside and outside the Capitol that breached the Capitol, trespassed. You also have individuals, roughly over 100, that we've charged with assaulting federal officers and local police officers. The 10% of the cases, I'll call them more complex conspiracy cases, where we do have evidence, it's in the public record, where individual militia groups from different facets, Oath Keepers, 3 Percenters, Proud Boys, did have a plan, we don't know what the full plan is, to come to D.C., organize, and breach the Capitol in some manner.
Sorry, I think I cut it off there. And finally, this is the clip that made a lot of news. Michael Sherwin explained when you're breaking the law, what the consequences are, when they're more severe, and then kind of surprise ending that made headlines.
You have to protect the First Amendment. The great majority of the people there were protesters. When do you cross that line? You cross the line when you cross a police line aggressively. You throw something at a cop. You hit a cop. You go into a restricted area knowing you're not supposed to be there. These are the plus factors that cross that line from a protester to a rioter.
Has the role of former President Trump been part of your investigation?
It's unequivocal that Trump was the magnet that brought the people to D.C. on the 6th. Now the question is he criminally culpable for everything that happened during the siege, during the breach? What I can tell you is this, based upon, again, what we see in the public record and what we see in public statements in court. We have plenty of people. We have soccer moms from Ohio that were arrested saying, well, I did this because my president said I had to take back our house. That moves the needle towards that direction. Maybe The president is culpable for those actions. But also, you see in the public record, too, militia members saying, you know what? We did this because Trump just talks a big game. He's just all talk. We did what he wouldn't do.
In short, you have investigators looking into the president's role.
We have people looking at everything. Correct. Everything's being looked at.
Okay, well, that's pretty interesting. We'll see what happens. Probably nothing. I don't want to get my hopes up, but fascinating interview and segments last night on 60 Minutes on CBS News. My Dan Rather. Okay, finally, I want to head over to CNN where Fareed Zakaria, I saw this final audio clip I'm going to share with you in this very thorough recap of all of the news programs from the weekend and analysis. Here is Fareed Zakaria on his program. What is it? GPS 360. I've always been interested in foreign policy and defense issues and how much money different countries spend and the whole threat matrix and why you spend money the way you do and how special interests, the defense industry here in America has such an influence on America's foreign policy as well as our defense budget, which is preposterous. And if you want to know where the waste is, it's all there. Anyway, Lloyd Austin is the new Secretary of Defense, and Fareed Zakaria plays a little clip of him talking about threats and then criticizes the angle of raising China up to be such a major threat. I thought this was great analysis by Fareed Zakaria.
Lloyd Austin outlined his key concern.
And while we were focused on issues in the Middle East, China has modernized its military, and so our goal is to make sure that we maintain a competitive edge over China or anyone else.
Welcome to the new age of bloated Pentagon budgets, all to be justified by the great Chinese threat. What Austin calls America's edge over China is more like a chasm. The United States has nearly 20 times the number of nuclear warheads as China. It has twice the tonnage of warships at sea, including 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, compared with China's 2 carriers, which are much less advanced. Washington has over 2,000 modern fighter jets, compared to Beijing's roughly 600, according to national security analyst Sebastian Roblin. And the U.S. deploys this power using a vast network of some 800 overseas bases. China has 3. China spends about $250 billion on its military, which is a third as much as the United States. Michael O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institution notes that if China were in NATO, we would berate it for inadequate burden sharing since its military outlays fall well below NATO's 2% minimum.
All right, that is Fareed Zakaria on his show on CNN on Sunday. And there's more to it, but I'm not going to play the entire clip, okay? So that was like 37 minutes of clips. Probably too much, right? Or was it just enough? I spent a few hours working on this, so if I'm wasting my time, if you don't like it, that's fine. Fine with me. Let me know. standupwithpete@gmail.com. I really enjoy reading it all and studying it all and listening to it all and then picking it and putting it together for you. But if it's too much, let me know. If you like it, that'd be great. I need your feedback. Let me know. Coming up, a very special message from a very special listener of Stand Up, my conversation with JL Cauvin. But now it's time for the news dump, though. It's not political. It's not COVID. But it is important, interesting, and potentially undercovered. It's time for the news dump, another jingle collaboration with listeners Pete Coe and Dan McDonnell. I haven't heard this yet. Here we go.
Wild turkeys on the prowl have some fluffy rumps and communicable disease on today's news dump.
Wild turkey? All right, boys. I love them. That's great. Keep it coming. I'm just going to keep thinking about wild turkeys. Okay. Hit the news dump music, Keith. Let's start in New York, where the NYPD is looking for answers after finding half a dozen envelopes containing white powder mailed to city schools in the last 2 weeks. The envelopes, each mailed in a similar-looking white envelope, were first received March 10th, police said. Still no word on what was in the envelopes, but 2 of them went missing up a couple of officers' noses because they were that hard up. Okay, I'm just making shit up. I'm sorry. That is ABC News reporting. Here's a weird story from the New York Post. A rundown estate in a ritzy Connecticut town devolved into a, quote, horror house littered with the decomposing corpses of dozens of goats. That story is just for Pete Coe and Dan McDonald to come up with a news dump jingle based on. There you go, boys. A new company will pay you $2,400 to stay away from screens for 24 hours. Done! Where do I sign up? The pandemic has forced many people to work remotely and students to study online, making screens more of a necessity than ever before. According to a 2019 report from nonprofit Common Sense Media, U.S. teens were spending an average of more than 7 hours per day on screen media for entertainment alone. Oh, my daughters can definitely break that record. Go to reviews.org if you want to sign up for that. I think I'm going to try to do that challenge. $2,400, you got it. I don't usually do obituaries in the news or in the news dump, but I learned more about this woman in her death, as I often do, embarrassingly. But she was a famous Egyptian feminist author, physician, and psychiatrist. She died age 89. Her name was Nawal al-Saadawi. She was known as a defender of women's rights and fought strongly against the widespread practice of female genital mutilation. She was jailed and persecuted and received threats from conservatives throughout her life for her daring views. She was the founder and president of Arab Women's Solidarity Association, co-founder of the Arab Association for Human Rights. Nawal al-Saadawi passed away at age 89. The Associated Press is reporting that a long-dormant volcano has come to life in southwestern Iceland. Lava spilling down two sides in the area's first volcanic eruption in nearly 800 years. Oh, great, a volcano. That's fantastic. Hadn't had that in 800 years? Everything's great. All the weather. The planet's doing fine, everybody. Don't worry about the planet. It's not us. She's not upset with us. I'm sure it's the murder hornets. We must find a new planet. And finally, there's no way I could complete the news dump without telling you about the guy who really wanted a photograph that was very memorable. And he tried to get it at the San Diego Zoo, and it ended with his arrest. 25-year-old guy, he bypassed a bunch of barriers to enter the Asian and African elephant habitat while carrying his 2-year-old daughter, according to the Associated Press. You hear this woman yelling, "Jose, stop! Stop, Jose!" And then he just jumps the fence and goes through the elephant enclosure, and he's got his little girl with him. Video recorded by a witness shows a trumpeting elephant. Okay, I can't do an elephant trumpet on cue. Charging at them as he scurries away. He drops the child, then picks her up, and he's able to get out safely. Oh my God. Did you hear about the story? Did you see the video? That's just the best place to end the news dump on. Okay. Now I want to play for you the message I've been promising you. It came to me through the Marco Polo video app, which is a really cool app that I use with some of you and a lot of my other friends. And you leave messages. It's a great thing for guys for some reason. I don't know. We don't listen very well, perhaps, and we don't like being put on the spot in a conversation. Maybe it's harder for us to be vulnerable while being in person. And so I love this Marco Polo app. It tends to get people to be really honest. And that's exactly what Jason Meux did over the weekend. He left me this message. It's like 8 minutes long. I think it's worth all of it because Jason talks about how lonely it can be when you stand up for what you believe in and you confront people, including those who you care about or even that you work with, and what's happened to him as a result. Many of you might know him. He's been a longtime listener, a contributor, and a huge supporter of the show and everything I've been doing pretty much my whole career. He's just a great guy, a super generous member of our community. He's on Twitter, by the way. He's not that active, but he's really good on Twitter. At Young Santa. He's got 89 followers, and if you want to let him know you appreciated this, at Young Santa 279, at Young Santa 279. Here's my friend Jason Meux down in Louisiana. And don't worry, the sound of his signal light goes off in just a second.
What up, man? Thinking about a couple of stories through my life recently, wanted to share. So, I'm still having a lot of, I'm not going to say mental issues, but I'm still having to resolve how I've ended friendships in the last year since all since COVID and George Floyd, and I know I've spoken about some of those to you. There were two specifically that I ended. One I did mano a mano, and then the other I did via text, because I had a longtime friend that I've known since I was 14 say a bunch of racist shit in a text thread that had about 20 close friends. So we're all have been really close for multiple decades, and we go on camping trips together every year for Memorial Day weekend. And there's a couple of people that I'm not too close with in the thread, but most of these people, I know all of their extended families. We've all been to each other's homes, and we hang out regularly throughout the year. And I'm starting to realize that whenever I called him out on that text thread, nobody fucking supported me. Nobody said anything in the text thread. I got a couple of calls and texts and sidebar conversations saying that it needed to be said, and they were proud of me for standing up, but no one ever corroborated me calling that fucking asshole out in the text thread. And since then, I've realized that a lot of those people don't text me anymore, don't call me anymore. And it's like this silent thing where I guess I've become the woke person that's going to call motherfuckers out. And you know what? Fuck them. I don't give a fuck. I started thinking back on my life and, like, have I really been a true steward of equality? And the answer is yes, but the answer is no. There have been times where I've used the N-word, whether that's singing in a rap song or, saying, what's up, my N-word, like just colloquialisms, if you will. But, I grew up in the South with a racist family, and I guess I started thinking back to what I've done and how I fought it. And a couple of stories came out that I wanted to share because they helped cement my path forward, and they helped me realize that I've done this many a times. And one of the first times that I did it, standing up to it face to face, was when I was 24. I was a bartender, so this is exactly 20 years ago. Down here we have Mardi Gras, as you know, which is a huge fucking deal. And I was bartending at this place, this hole in the wall that was really famous. It had been open since the 30s, famous for their Bloody Marys or whatever. And this bar opened before segregation, obviously. So they had a back door in that was split in half, so only the top would open. And even when I was working there, oftentimes African Americans would just come to the back door and they would buy, a fifth of whatever, or they'd buy a case of beer. And one time this gentleman came to the back door, and he would always buy a fifth of Dickel whiskey, and then he would give me, he would ask if I could give him, sometimes $20 in quarters, or sometimes $100 in quarters. And I was like, yeah, man, what do you need all these quarters for? And he's like, man, we play poker. And I was like, dude, I love poker. And he's like, you want to come play? And I was like, hell yeah, I want to come play. He says, all right, when do you get off? I said, 2 o'clock. So go play poker with this guy. Obviously, I'm the only white guy amongst a bunch of old, black gentlemen. And it was a fucking riot. And they took all my money. And it was so fun. And they fed me, and we choked, and it was awesome. And so word kind of spread around within the black community of that small town that I was cool, I was okay. And so one gentleman by the name of Smokey, who would come sit in the bar, and there were very few black people would come sit in this bar. And he would come sit in the bar, and he would have 2 or 3 beers, and then he would leave. And he would always do it on a Saturday morning. And he would always tip me, and he would never tip anyone else. He'd always give me $1 for every beer. And so one Saturday morning, it was the Saturday prior to Mardi Gras, and there were people all over the place. It was crazy. And this really tall guy with a 10-gallon hat comes in and sits down and has a couple of beers, and then he starts playing pool. He's throwing money around, giving girls $100 tips and all kinds of stupid shit. And in walks Smokey. He sits down. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? You know, give him the bro hug. He sits down. And this 10-gallon hat guy, this fucking asshole, walks up to the bar. And he says, I thought they didn't let you people in this place. And so I hear this and I look and I said, hey, man, so, what'd you say? And he's like, I tell you, this is how we're going to solve this. And he whips out a wad of cash. And he proceeds to lay out $500 bills in a diagonal fashion, like one, and then he would place each one diagonally. He says, I want you to take this and get your fucking black ass out of here. And so Smokey looks at him and takes a long pull of his beer and sets his beer down, tips me, and orders it. He says, I'd like another one, please, Jason. I said, you got it. And then I look, so 10-gallon hat looks at me and says, you ain't gonna do nothing about this? I said, yeah, I'm gonna do something about it. I said, you and your fucking crew get the fuck out of here. I said, you're not welcome here anymore. I said, I'd rather take his dollar tip than all the money you got in your fucking bank account. He says, no, that ain't happening. You ain't kicking me out. I said, you fucking leaving. Either you leave or I grab you by the nape of the neck and I throw you fucking out. And so came around the bar, you know, prepared to open this guy's fucking, open the door with this guy's fucking head. He says, no, I got it. I'm going to solve this. So this asshole goes out. He leaves the bar and he parked a Cadillac, of course a Cadillac, right outside the front door. And I see him reach into the car and he pulls out a .38 snub nose and puts it in his pocket. And I was working with the bar owner's nephew, and his name was Ryan. And so I screamed out, Ryan, he's got a gun. Well, Ryan, who's 6'5" and a giant of a man, jumps behind the bar and hides. And at that point, I got scared, and I was fucking scared. It was one of these out-of-body experiences where it was kind of like E.T., where I was frozen, and I didn't move. I didn't do anything, and I watched myself. I was so scared, I just knew that I had to stay by the door, and when he opened the door, I didn't have the key to lock it. So when he opened the door, I watched it was like I was out of my body, watching my body work. I grabbed his hand before he could pull it out of his pocket with the gun on it, and I held him by the neck, and I shoved his face and his upper body on the foosball table right by the door. And we called the cops. And I couldn't hold him forever, so I let him go, and he ran into his fucking car and sped off before the cops got there. But it made me think, you know, it's like, and I have tons of other examples, like, you know, the first home I built with my wife, my dad walks in and drops the N-word, and I said, you're not saying that in my house. It's my motherfucking house now. Get out. And oh, no, I won't say it again. And he said it again, so I kicked his fucking ass out. Like, you know, all these fucking instances that I pulled from my brain, like, I've been trying to do the right thing. And I've done the right thing when it pertains to me, but now I'm doing the right thing when it pertains to all. So if I lose all these friends in this text string, fuck them all. And just like you said, fuck them today, fuck them tomorrow, and fuck them forever. I don't give a fuck. I'm cool with it.
Jason Meux at Young Santa 279 if you like that. And by the way, if you like that Marco Polo app and you wanna talk with me on it, it's really great. And just reach out. Maybe you've got something you want to share, a story that could help other folks, something that you've been through, and you could leave me one of those messages. So I do that with a lot of folks, and I also wanted to play that just to show you an example of how it kind of works. You just leave each other messages. I'm not a spokesman for the company. They should pay me. I should get them as a sponsor because I really like it. Okay, now on to JL Cauvin, who is a hilarious comedian who I have known pretty much his whole career, and he really blew up during the pandemic with his viral impressions of Donald Trump, and now so many more. He does Dave Chappelle and Andrew Cuomo and Mitch McConnell, and he's a great stand-up comic, but he's also just a really thoughtful guy. He's generous, he's funny, he's smart, he's a Georgetown-educated lawyer, and he is biracial, which he talks a lot about. His mom is Irish, his dad is Haitian. Tells a very interesting story about his mom, who's living alone during the pandemic. pandemic. And he is right now fundraising for Hope for Haiti. His goal is $5,000. He's up to $3,200. He's been so generous with his money. You can go to give.hopeforhaiti.com, and, well, that link is in the show notes for JL Cauvin, or look at his Twitter feed, at JL Cauvin. He has 2 podcasts, ladies and gentlemen. Every Tuesday, Righteous Prick drops. Every Wednesday, Making Podcast Great Again drops. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel, hire him on Cameo, of course, see him live, or buy any of his 6 stand-up comedy albums just to thank him for joining me here on Stand Up, where he is also a regular listener and subscriber to this show. My friend JL Cauvin with the Monday Conversation. Okay, the great, the legend, the icon, JL Cauvin joining me for the Monday Conversation. We can talk about what has happened, what may happen, and it's just always great to talk to you. And could you just, thank you for joining me, could you clear up, all weekend long I saw trending the Snyder Cut, and then I saw you made like an 8-minute video using some of your best impressions reacting to the Snyder Cut. I don't want to go deep into it, but what is the Snyder Cut? Your video is very, very funny, but
thank you.
I still don't know what this is all about.
Yeah, it's, I guess, Zack Snyder is this sort of action director who has he's been at the helm of all the DC movies, like Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, the Justice League, almost all of which were panned by critics, and basically were, just looked like the stupid little brother to the Marvel universe, which was so thoughtfully and expertly crafted as a cinematic universe. And I think what they did with Justice League was they were dumb about it. They didn't have confidence that, hey, we've got Superman and Batman. Those are the 1 and 2 comic book properties in history. We can take our time with this. We can develop slowly, just like Marvel did. We're going to make the money. But instead, I think they were like, oh, no, Avengers is already out. We better race to get our Avengers. So they did one before like 3/4 of the characters even had backstory films. They were just like, let's fucking do all of them right now. And it was a mess. So the Snyder Cut was this hope, I guess, by DC fans that like, no, his vision is like, they really messed up his vision. Now, I will say I watched all 3 movies the last week. Like I revisited Man of Steel, the 3-hour version of Batman vs. Superman, and then the 4-hour Snyder Cut. Not as awful as I remember in the theaters. For
the Snyder Cut is the director's cut of the original film called The Justice League. For anybody that is
right. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's okay. I'm not giving like that level of. I apologize. But it's like an hour and 30 extra minutes, which is literally like another movie. It's still somewhat messy. The effects are still not great, but it was like an all right movie. Like I was like, oh, B-, but before I would have probably given the original Justice League even worse.
All right. So that's everything that's all I missed.
There's such a commitment by comic book fans who probably maybe like those characters more and wanted those films to be equal to Marvel. What Marvel did was basically take all the characters that weren't quite as popular as Batman and Superman, and then made this incredible.
Oh, it's such an amazing universe that they created. Yeah.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, I'm over it, to be honest. Like I'm not watching the TV shows because I'm just like
my daughter and I.
That's fine. But I'm like 20 films is already a strong investment of my time. I don't need to see, but what they did was really incredible. There really can't be any denying that. And I think DC fans were so, oh, God, why can't we have it? So now you see a lot of DC fans going, I thought the Snyder Cut did it. They did it. And it feels more like Knicks fans being excited that their team is like 500 this year, which is pleasant. But it doesn't mean you're winning an NBA title. So stop talking like it.
That's the culture lead. I'm going to be Jake Tapper. The sports lead, speaking of NBA's, apparently
take that, Christian Finnegan.
The greatest basketball player to ever live has injured his ankle. Or LeBron James is out. These are stories I couldn't avoid on Twitter and in the news, and I just have to clear up. So LeBron James is injured, right? Is that major news? Apparently.
It is, and as a lifelong Utah Jazz fan, that may sound funny, but I am. They are the number 1 seed currently in the West,
So
and an injury to LeBron James is only
Good for your
news
team. So
to my team.
Okay, we know
Even
where you
though
stand.
he is my favorite player of all time, that is not a Utah Jazz player.
So the big story of the weekend was that Miami Beach declared a state of emergency. They set a curfew, thousands of arrests, 4-hour traffic jams, and it's because of spring break, and everybody went to Miami Beach. Have you ever been to a spring break location party? What do you make of a bunch of young people? So many people going to Miami Beach that they had to shut it down and kick them all out and shoot them with rubber bullets.
Here's my spring break story. Spring break, senior year of college. You have to imagine this is JL, jacked JL, and also carb cutting JL. So I'm ready for spring break at a next level. Panama City, Florida, which just basically felt like, I don't know, like it felt like I was in gonorrhea. And it was really gross because you know, I was from a liberal arts New England college. So I'm like, you get down there and you're just like, oh my God, there's a whole lot of like trash in this country. And so I got drunk. I partied. My second night of 5 nights, I hooked up with a stranger, felt incredibly guilty. Threw my clothes in the garbage. I felt so guilty and never went out again for the rest of the week.
Why'd you feel guilty?
And then my girlfriend, when I got back to school, read it off my face.
Oh, you felt guilty because you were in a relationship.
I cheated.
Oh, wow. Okay, I got it.
Thus began a very long saga over the next 4 years of love and guilt and love and guilt.
Well, at least you didn't buy any people and sell them the way apparently the Jesuits did. Can we talk about that story at all?
If you want, I'm still trying to broker. I'm still trying to be a power broker here and get my sister-in-law, Rachel Swarns. But she is, no offense, she is actually receiving obviously quite a lot of, I think, potential.
Your sister-in-law is an NYU
professor.
She's an author and she's a New York Times contributing writer. And yeah, we'll hopefully at some point we'll be able to get her on the podcast. But the big revelation, you were tweeting about this. She tweeted, Rachel Swarns, in 2016, I received an email that knocked me off my feet. It was a tip about Jesuit priests who sold 272 people in 1838 to save Georgetown University. This wasn't news to historians, but it astounded me. Catholic priests participated in the slave trade. Why didn't I know? How about that?
Yeah, she's working on a book right now. And I'm not claiming any credit for this, but I remember I did buy her, a professor of mine from Williams. He's now at MIT, but Craig Wilder. He wrote a book called Ebony and Ivy about slavery and the Ivy League. And I remember I bought her and I sent it to him to get autographed as like a gift for a birthday or a Christmas one year, many years ago. So I like to think that I planted a seed there, which is, of course, insane to say. But still, I like to say it.
Well, that's a pretty big revelation. I wasn't familiar with that. I mean, if I was, I don't know if I'd ever learned that. But
yeah, it's interesting. I remember when the article, it was a big deal when that first article went up. And I think since then, Georgetown had, I think, offered, full scholarships to descendants. I think they still had to get into the school, but that it was going to be fully covered. And that is when people talk about reparations, if you can pinpoint individual universities, companies and things like that, everybody always kind of thinks it's just going to be, so Uncle Sam's going to take my taxpayer money and pay Calvin down the street to live high on the hog.
Calvin.
And it's like, I picked the same name of the guy from the McDonald's commercials many years ago. But Calvin got reparations? Calvin got reparations. Look up the Calvin Got a Job commercial. Anyway, that's an example of like, you can never pay it back, but that's a good faith, solid gesture that could represent a sort of individual groups and companies and schools doing their part.
And apparently, the Jesuits are making up for that now. I mean, the follow up to that story is they're trying to raise money to pay families.
$100 million.
Is that right? Yeah, something like that. Crazy. Interesting story to follow up on. Hopefully, we'll get your sister-in-law here on the podcast. And speaking of racism, chapter 27 in JL witnesses racism as if it's totally fine. You and your girlfriend.
You never want to. I give off big John Turturro and do the right thing energy.
And what is
apparently.
What does that mean exactly?
He was like the extremely racist son of Danny Aiello in Do the Right Thing, which I rewatched recently, and it really is an incredible movie. And Danny Aiello, among many people, is so good in that movie. Rest in peace.
Yeah, he recently passed.
But yes, so I brought this up before, and I since obviously I would love it if people would listen to the Righteous PK podcast. Is how you can find it on Spotify and Apple. But so I will be discussing it there. But I went to a pub restaurant that's fairly new in my neighborhood that I really, really like.
In New Jersey.
In New Jersey. It's a really nice ambiance. The food is great. It's a place that I keep saying, I can't wait for this shit to be over so I can watch a game in there.
Right.
And maybe I could host a comedy night there. Like, it's that kind of a vibe. It's just a beautiful new place. And they weathered the storm. They were supposed to open last year, and a month before opening, everything got shut down.
Yeah, that's saying something.
So I'm happy to see them weathering the storm, and I'm sitting outside with my girlfriend last night. Dinner is served, and they have those outdoor heating lamps.
Yeah.
And he was turning it on, and we've had some pithy banter before. Just hey, how you doing? Hey, one joke, goodbye. Goes to work on something else. The owner, and while we're sitting there, and he's adjusting the gas tank. The heater needed a new gas tank. 3 black teenagers walk by, and they, somewhat loudly, but not super loud, but loud enough to be like, huh? They were like, boom, implying like, haha, the gas tank's going to blow up on you.
Right.
Okay. Now, in my head, I'm going, assholes, as we discussed before. That's like, I was like, assholes, jerks. Assholes is really what I was thinking.
Obnoxious teens, just being teens. Yeah.
No, of course, teens. But that doesn't excuse them from the knee-jerk reaction of assholes.
Sure, yeah, no, but I mean,
because I'm just sitting here enjoying my meal, like eating my meal.
Right.
And the guy shook his head. He made a smile. You could see through the mask. He just kind of shook his head, and I was like, okay. And then he just went, orangutans.
No, dear. No, that's bad. That's not good.
This is, we've discussed this off mic and before. I have had so many of these experiences where I just sit there and I go, well, my night's ruined, but what do I do now? And I was talking to you before. I was like, do I go? I didn't say anything. I didn't make a scene. He just, went back to tend to some other stuff. And I talked to my girlfriend after, and I tried to rationalize it. I was like, is there any way? And I was rationalizing because it was so brazen. It was so 1980s Howard Beach level bigotry that it was like, no, inappropriate. It was inappropriate, but I don't know. But it was like, I don't know. Did he think being a more specific primate rather than just saying monkeys was somehow better? It was like a gut punch. And this is not a friend. But you're just sitting there going, I don't know if I can patronize this business anymore.
Right.
In a real way. And that's not, I'm not trying to cancel him. If I tweeted about that.
Right.
He'd be in some serious shit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is a very diverse neighborhood. It's one of my favorite things about where I moved by sort of coincidence.
You have 140,000 followers on Twitter. It's not like, you get 2 people following you. No matter what you tweet, it's going to get attention. So you have to think long and hard about.
And a comment like that would get, even if the algorithms are not favoring me right now, that would blow the fuck up.
Sure.
And I'd be like, do I say the business? What business? I want to know what business is it. And it's, I'm one of these people who's like, the power of cancel culture. I know many people don't think that's a thing or it's accountability. I believe that it's like fucking Sal's Pizzeria in fucking Do the Right Thing. I'm sitting here going, well, there's waitresses and waiters who are very nice. There's a kitchen staff that is, I've seen different people, genders and races working in the restaurant. So do you ruin the business? But in my head, I'm like, I know I can't go back there until I at least speak to this guy. And is it worth my time and energy to eat a nice burger and watch a game there, to like have a sit down with this guy, nothing for anything other than like, I need to know that if I come back here, you know how I feel, and you take that in, and maybe it opens your eyes. Maybe it just makes you more cautious. But the idea of saying that to me, I know he doesn't know what I am, but in your business, you're at work, you're at your business, a new seemingly going to be successful business. And you say to a customer that you have exchanged a total of like 100 words with over the last 2 months, orangutans, and you're like looking at me thinking the logic leaps you have to make. First of all, you have to be like, I'm totally comfortable calling black teenagers orangutans. I'm also comfortable doing this at my job. I'm also comfortable sharing this with customers who I think are white. And if they're white, they're cool with.
It's a lot. It's a
racist tropes being thrown around while they're eating their meal, which is why I kept kind of going, is it possible? I'm not saying this guy isn't MAGA, isn't something, but is it possible unless in his mind, the first impulse was, Tom, I don't know his name, but Tommy, don't say the N-word. Do better than that.
One notch up.
Close call.
Yeah.
But it was so, on so many levels, it was so disturbing. I still feel a little bit, I'm not like a storm out type person, but part of me was like, I have these dilemmas all the time where I go, do I leave? And I don't know. The sad thing is my girlfriend thinks if my brother had been there, ignoring the fact that my sister-in-law is a black woman, but had my brother been there, I have jokes about how my brother is like the slightly blacker version of me. In other words, a little more Derek Jeter in terms of he has clearly sort of kinky hair. His nose is a little broader. Even though people think we look just alike, there are subtle ethnic differences. If I'm being blunt, it's my family, but it's just the truth. She wondered if it was my brother sitting there, if he would have said something. I mean, if the guy would have said the same comment.
What you're describing though happening,
and my brother would have walked out, and that's part of me is like, I don't know. I feel like a gutless bitch for not like, I was like, I'm going to finish my hamburger and then I'm going to like figure out what to do about this.
Well,
it doesn't feel righteous. But my feeling is always one of like great discomfort. And I think that takes the guts out of me sometimes, where I want to like, had that happen to someone else, I would have been like, hey man. But when it happens to you, all of a sudden you almost feel like, I don't want to say bullied because he's not trying to bully me, but you almost feel like, I have to own this for myself. This is uncomfortable.
What you're describing is something I hear about and have experienced myself often, and people I think are grappling with this more and more. When do I speak up? When do I say something? Now, in your case, you're beating yourself up for not saying something at that moment. You're wondering. I do
want to go to, like I said to you, I'm thinking something that might be fruitful rather than is just be like,
burn the place down.
Yeah, no, go talk to the guy. And you know what? Odds are he's either going to apologize, just knowing it's good business to just be like, oh, I'm, bad choice of words. Right? I apologize. And I'll accept that and hope that maybe it makes him aware.
Yeah.
And that's worth something. That is worth something.
Dude, it absolutely is. You can also just write an email to the guy. I mean, even anonymously, like I'm a customer of yours. I enjoy your restaurant. I'm looking forward to reopening.
He's not doing it so commonly that he's like, which customer was this that I said orangutan
I
to?
call black people names all the time. I'm not sure which one it could have been. But it's a common thing. My friend Jason Meux just left me I'm going to play it, a whole Marco Polo about how he's dealt with these kinds of things throughout his life, and when do you say something and when don't you, and then by the way, like kind of ending friendships and relationships over. It's an interesting and I think an important yet challenging phase that we're going through in terms of when do you speak up, when do you speak out. And in your case, you're half black. You've been in a situation so many times, people just assume they can say things. And so it happens too often, and you'll handle it. You'll handle it. You're going to do something. You're going to say something. You're going to go to him and talk to him because you want to go back to that restaurant, and you have such a deep conscience, JL. You're not going to be able to do it otherwise.
Oh, no. That's the thing. And I still don't know if I would go back to the restaurant, but I think, it's one of those things that I feel like I need to have that conversation for myself so that it doesn't go unspoken for my own pride. But at the same time, that's such a deep racist cut.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
This isn't me doing you did a joke about something and we're being too PC. It was like, you went about as hard as you could without saying the N-word. It's very uncomfortable. And it's like I said, it's a very diverse neighborhood. It's the only Catholic church I've ever been to. I live across the street from my church, where I look and I go, holy shit. It's like when things are normal, it's like, holy shit, it's like 20% black, like 20% Asian, 20% Latin, 40% white. So it's that kind of a neighborhood where even just in the church, you're getting a cross section like that. So it's a weird thing to open a business, and maybe I'm just going to be a podcast Raheem, right? I'm going to throw a trash. Have you ever seen Do the Right Thing?
No, I don't think I have.
Oh, God.
You keep referencing it, and I keep acting like I know what you're talking about.
Referencing a class. People listening to this will laugh at podcast.
Yes, that's why I realize my place in this conversation.
Raheem. He was a big guy, the late actor Bill Nunn. He carried a boombox around, and the climactic scene involves him in a movie that will shock you today because it is so relevant, unbelievably relevant.
I gotta go back. I will go back and watch it based on the humiliation and embarrassment. I mean, I've seen parts of it for sure years and years ago, but I should revisit it or watch the entire thing in context. Let me ask you though another. Wait, what did you finish that? What would that mean if you were him, Raheem? You would do what?
That means what? I can't. I don't want to give away the ending, but it would basically be me involved throwing it.
Don't spoil a movie. A 30-year-old movie for me, for my sake. Speaking of ethics, I feel like we're at a point right now where people have stopped caring why you qualified to get the vaccine. And anybody that gets the vaccine now, good for you. I feel like that's where we're at in the third week of March. Do you agree, disagree? Do you still feel like there's some kind of questioning, shame? How did you get it? I'm waiting in line because I feel like it's a free-for-all now. It certainly is in certain parts of the country.
Right. I think, I got it because I'm fat and I filled out accurately what I was. I said overweight. I didn't even click obese, even though I think by medical standards, I probably could have gotten in on that. And I became eligible by my state's rules. So I would not have jumped the line as much as I would want to unless I was told I could. Now, I think the problem we're going to run into, from what I read, this is not my own information, but it seems that as they open it up, there's going to be more and more people who want it. But we have this group, many Republicans, Republicans seem to be, they always talk about black people are reticent about the vaccine, but it still seems being a Republican man seems to be the most resistant. Yeah. If you're looking at any demographic.
Yep.
And what's going to be problematic, obviously, is that we'll get to May and it'll be like, hey, 62% are vaccinated. We're well on our way. But then you find out, 22% have no intention of even trying to get the vaccine. And I don't know. There's a guy I'm Facebook friends with who always does these funny jokes where he cuts things where people talk about that's gay on Twitter. It'll be like, dude was eating a popsicle it was mad gay. So the guy will freeze that and go, guys, is enjoying ice cream gay? Like he'll frame it like that. It's very funny the way he kind of does it. I know this is taking off on a tangent, but it feels like there are these masculinity tests that the Republican Party has are really in parody level now.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
it's a parody of masculinity.
Yeah.
Like, I carry a gun and I don't take medicine because I'm a real man. Like, you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, I've been riffing on this for a long time. It's like, my favorite one is like, I'm a real fireman. I don't use extinguishers or a helmet.
Yes, I remember you saying that. Right.
Like, what kind of, it's not manly to have a scuba tank or to be the catcher on a baseball team and wear a chest protector. Like, it's bizarre. Really, I don't wear a seatbelt. What?
Right. But and the fact is that Trump got it. And even then, it's like now the movement is almost beyond Trump. He's almost like his energy, his like faux masculine life force is now living in his disciples. It's very much the body of Trump instead of the body of Christ. It's just like now
Trump.
You don't listen to liberals. Doctors are stupid. But that's what it feels. It's like
in the name of the Father, the Son, and Eric. It wasn't great.
You know what I would love to, honestly, God, if I had a sketch show, you do realize I would do the entire like Jesus's birth as Trump, like Trump, you come out with a Trump face on the baby and Ivanka somehow is Mary.
Wow. Oh man, give this man a budget. I want that sketch.
But it is a parody of, and it's so sad because you say, oh, well, fuck them, let them. But we're not segregated. We're not living in different countries where they move freely. They will infect somebody. They will make somebody asymptomatic. It will get to somebody's grandmother who will die. And I thought about this recently where I was like, we're still losing what? Like, is it 1,000 people a day? More than that to this thing? Like, this has almost become the way war became for a while. I'm not comparing people passing away of an illness to combat, but where we're just kind of like, well, things are good. Oh, 1,500 more people still died yesterday.
Yep.
Well, I got a vaccine and like, it seems like the economy is humming again and things are going to be all right. But it's like it's very, even if you're somebody who thinks that the virus was overblown, that masks don't work as well as they do, that you don't want the vaccine, fine. But people are dying. And how about respect for that? These are the same people who, if you make a joke about 9/11 20 years later, they'll go, no, because that fits in with their brand of what's sacred. But
you can't make a joke, right? You can't do a joke about 9/11,
because that's on brand for them. Like they're the people of when Muslims attack us, we never forget. We stand in solidarity. We honor that every day. Nothing is funny about that. But when grandmas are dying,
and when they attack the Capitol, it's I mean, not to move the conversation from COVID to that. I mean, they desperately, Republicans and Trump supporters desperately want to bury that day and act. They don't want to do an investigation. They don't want to get to the root causes of why those people were there. I heard some of the Republicans on the Sunday shows today, like, oh, there's no need to get to try to psychoanalyze people. What? Of course you have to do a thorough investigation into what caused it and what created it and what inspired it, and then prosecute those people. How is that divisive?
Yep. No, it's very, I find this all
Was anybody
very
divided
sad
about investigating 9/11? Were we divided about that?
But that was...
Or Timothy McVeigh?
Scarier for more people, and it was Muslim terrorists. Like, that's the key. The key is that it's what they decided is bad and evil attacked us. And white guys trying to murder Nancy Pelosi is not that scary.
What are your reactions to the shooting in Atlanta at these massage parlors? You've been tweeting about, people after these horrible things happen. We try to look at, was it racial? Was it gender? Just, apparently the kid was pissed about his sex life, addiction, or whatever. Who knows what it was? But the policy answer to it is obviously to do something about guns. You tweeted, Rex Chapman had a great tweet. In Georgia, you can decide to buy a firearm to slaughter 8 innocent people and purchase it that same day. But in Georgia, you can't decide to vote and then vote that same day. Really great point.
Yeah, it's
the guns.
I hate to say this because I called Bill Maher's argument pretty much word for word to my girlfriend, and then we watched it, and it was his entire first story on Real Time. Where I said to my girlfriend, I said, reading about this kid, I say kid because I'm 41. Man, he's legal, he's a man. But 21 to me, I would generally refer to as a kid.
That's fine.
But
I agree with that.
Maybe that's some bias there on my part. But this murderer, this mass murderer, I actually, I don't want to seem insensitive because as Bill Maher said what I was thinking, and I knew he would say it because it's either way, he believes it and it's going to get him attention. But he said there is absolutely an unconscionable amount of anti-Asian violence going on in this country that has been building up for a while, in part because of Donald Trump's labeling of it as a China virus.
Kung flu, he called it over and over.
Kung flu. On my podcast, we call it the flu jitsu. And and he acknowledged all that off the bat, but then said, but when I read about this person, he really does seem to be somebody who was like effed up in that way, like that it was a loose cannon.
It's not like he could. If anything, he couldn't stop. He couldn't stop going to massage parlors. It sounds like. I have no idea, but I mean, that's
now to say that it's not connected because obviously something about sexualizing the Asian women is at work. So it's not the Asian component. I don't think can be or should be removed from the equation.
Right.
And I think this is one of those things where no one in the Asian community who's going to be, or anybody who's been talking about this and caring about this for a long time, is really going to care that much about parsing what percentage of this was race related versus repressed evangelical gun-toting anger. But if I'm saying honestly, it seems to be much more of that in this case than necessarily a racial animus. But, there is a racial component to it.
The thing that I keep saying is where can we agree maybe on this and how can we prevent this? Because this type of thing happens in other countries as well, where young men injure women. They abuse women. Domestic abuse is something I've talked about and thought about and worked to end for years. And it starts with language and it starts with the way you think and all that. The difference, however, in America is you can go and buy a gun today and kill everybody. That's the difference. So can we agree that if the guy didn't have a gun, most of those people would probably still be alive? Come on.
Yeah. I mean, but I know this is sort of a place for good conversations and hope, but when you look at what's happening in terms
Thank you for recognizing that.
In terms of race, in terms of guns, in terms of voting, this would be a difficult problem if like 5% of the country were totally about guns and hate and suppression of votes. It's like 35%.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
and that's not stage one. And I made this analogy to somebody. I said in a book, Donald Trump was a tumor. The cancer of Donald Trump has fully metastasized, and it is like stage 3 at least in the body of this country. I don't know. There are moments where I sort of think about my future, potentially buying a home where I want to live, and I joke with my girlfriend because she has no interest whatsoever in Cleveland. I love the city of Cleveland. You can live there cheaply, and it's the natural beauty of the lake. Feels like you're on you basically have an ocean view because the lake is so damn big, and it's cheap. And I like the Midwest, and there's 3 professional sports teams. Not going to happen, but I think of that sometimes almost in a cowardly way where I go, when water becomes scarce and the East Coast becomes flooded, maybe a compound in Cleveland is going to be a great place to be when I'm 75. And it sounds like a joke because I'm not prone to paranoid thinking like that. But part of me goes, if Lower Manhattan and Miami Beach are gone in 2055 or 2060, I'm going to be sitting somewhere going, wow, look at that. Cleveland homes are selling for 10 times what they used to because the climate is not as hot.
You should really think more about upstate New York. The Finger Lakes. Come on, man.
Maybe.
No, but I hear what you're saying in terms of, but that you can't, I think, I don't know. For me, I just try not to get too wrapped up and thinking too far ahead because there's just so much uncertainty and I prefer to be optimistic. But I do think you're right about the disease of bigotry and fear and ignorance, and it's metastasizing. It's a major issue. Do you think Joe Biden, who's got a pretty good approval rating overall, but definitely a lot more with, every minority outside of white folks and specifically white men, he's doing pretty well overall? Do you think that there's any kind of leadership in any way that could ever bridge the divide? Because I feel like everything is run by media. It's like Hannity and his vape pen are so much more influential. And as long as we're going to have people that are going to make millions of dollars dividing us with stupid binaries over the most complex issues like immigration over the weekend, it's this or it's that. Are you fucking kidding me? It's such a long conversation as to why people want to come to America and all this. And it's hard for me to get past the media divisive people.
Well, and you bring up Hannity a lot, and I think and you talk about Tucker Carlson as well. But it seems like Tucker Carlson has become some sort of like Limbaugh, Gingrich, some sort of Rush Limbaugh meets Newt Gingrich, like supervillain of Republican bullshit.
Yeah,
because he has this ability to rev up. I mean, his program is disgusting. Hannity seems like the guy holding court at your local bar who's like, Shawnee knows what the fuck. He went to college. He knows what the fuck he's talking about. This guy's sharp as a tack. But he's just a guy bloviating like that's what it is. Whereas Carlson comes with that. I bring the manner in which he presents himself is I bring the Gingrich intellectual heft of the Republican Party, but I'm also trying to completely weaponize hate, fear, and bigotry like a Rush Limbaugh. And he's kind of like a combo, which I'm sure he'd find like incredibly flattering. But I'm not somebody prone to like hopelessness, but I kind of do feel hopeless, not hopeless like for my life, but hopeless in terms of is any of this going to really change? Like we are in I hope it's not a death spiral, but in this social media, 24-hour news, people more and more closed off, algorithms dictating basically how, like even when you're not choosing specifically, like I want to follow this, it will eventually pick up on what you like, what you think, and will only enforce that and will only try to build on that. It won't even try to present you. I think it'd be fascinating if social media algorithms were just like 180 reversed one day. And it was like, you're only going to get things that you don't want to see. And people might turn it off or might hear a different perspective. And it would probably be much better for everybody except the social media companies. But I don't know. I think we're in deep trouble as a species and as a country.
I share your concern, but I will not give up hope. And there's so many, amazing people that I've connected with over the past year that I didn't know before that bring me a lot of that too. I think sometimes it's easier to lose faith when you're not having great experience and conversations and connections with people. But
yeah, well, this has certainly been painful.
This what?
Conversation.
No. I think it's important. I think it's important to mention all that, and it creates a conversation. All right, so I'll let you go. It sounds like your girlfriend is making tea for 12.
Whoa, it's a great microphone. It really picks up on the coughs.
Good. What are you guys eating?
We're eating salmon and asparagus, so we call it Stinky Pea Sundays.
Oh, good. Enjoy that. And
is that it? That's it for us?
No, I can talk more. I just feel like you got to go. I feel like
I got time for one more segment.
All right. Well, we could do a wild card. Let me see. What did I have in my notes of things that I wanted to make sure I got to? Oh, well, that one was kind of depressing too. Do we want to end on that one? Oh, well, let's just talk about how hard it is. Or hilariously frustrated at some point we're going to be to help our parents with technology. You were tweeting about that. You just saw mom who is living alone now, but now that there's a vaccine, you're going to hopefully be able to see her more often. But you had to go over, what did you have to set up? An alarm clock?
We got her a new computer because her computer was my mom. To know the personality of my mom, it's very simple. When we wanted to buy her a new computer because she'd had one for almost 7 years, and you can imagine how slow it was operating. And she said, if I want a computer, I'll get it. And her reason was, you get me a computer, I drop dead a year later, and it's a total waste.
Really?
So, yeah. So
you were like, no, I'll just take it. I'll use it if you're gone.
Right. But, so we got her a new computer. So I was there setting it up, and it's very funny. She was very competent on her computer at work, but like something about getting older and having her like a new computer in her home. She's like, will I still be able to get all my emails? Like questions like that. Wow. And I had to explain to her, I was like, email is like a movie. There's many different movie theaters that you can see the same movie in. You know, you can go Firefox, Chrome, Edge, but it's always going to be available. It's always going to be available to you. So she still can't wrap her mind after all these years of using a computer. But it's we were talking before the show. It just made me. She is at this point, though, which is very sad for me, because she is somebody who lost her mother when she was 4. And she went to work. She graduated high school at 17 and then went to work for the next 59 years.
Jeez.
And, you know, in that time with a high school education, and I jokingly say, and then she decided to marry an immigrant black man in the early 70s because life isn't hard enough as a woman born in the 40s with a high school education. You've got to up the level. And she managed to, you know, own her own home and get $1 million pension. And her oldest son is a senior editor at ProPublica, and her youngest son is a lawyer and a webcam girl. So she has done exceedingly well, but she is now at this point where, you know, she lost her job after 42 years. I mean, it was probably a good thing for her that they were making changes, but it still wounded her pride after all the time she put into the company. Her brother, my uncle, and her next door neighbor for 35 years passed away last year. And she is, you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, she said to me today, she's like, I don't have, you know, I don't really have that many friends. And now with no job to go to and your uncle passing, she's just kind of, she's very frustrated and very sad because she's the type of person who life dealt her many hardships and it just built her resolve. She was often could be unfriendly and harsh, but her mission, she lost her mother at 9. I'm sorry. My uncle was 4. She was 9. But her mission became, I'm going to have kids and they are going to be my world and they are never going to be without. And I'm going to do everything I can to make them the best and most successful they can be. And now it's like mission accomplished, humble brag, but it's like mission accomplished, but she's now, and I don't even know how to find things. So I'm glad she's vaccinated. I'm going to be fully vaccinated in a few weeks. And I hope she can come out to Jersey, spend some time out here, get away from you know, her sort of lonely existence right now. But it tested the toughest person I know. And it's, you know, her experience has kind of broken her. And it's disheartening to see because this is literally the strongest, most forceful person I know. And, you know, so it feels bad. I mean, a few years ago, my dad passed away in 2017 and I had to, you know, he was in a nursing home. And I would see him like twice a week, but he was at the end of the hall and you'd just leave and you felt like it felt 10 times worse because he's just alone in his room at the end of the nursing home hall. And with my mom, it sort of feels that way also. And just, I'm leaving you alone. And there's no real choice right now. That's where we live. But it's, that is, of all the reasons to be happy for this to be moving on, it's a chance to maybe we can have, me and my brother can help her find, not to give up, not to be like, well, there's nothing else to do. I guess just be miserable and lonely.
It's really, Another thing, what you're explaining is something that so many of us can relate to, and I really appreciate your honesty about that. But
I used to visit for community service when I was in Sunday school and high school. We had to do community service, and I remember it was such a weird thing that I did. I would visit nursing home residents. That was an option. So you go to the nursing home, and they say, "Oh yes, we'd love that. They'd love to talk to you," and you feel weird at first, but you start to realize these are just people who their family might be working. I could only see my dad twice a week. It's not like I wasn't in his life.
Right.
But that still sucks.
I feel like when I'm older, I'm determined not to have that loneliness and I wonder if we won't, because we'll have all this technology and we'll always be able to talk to people. I have this now huge community of friends. I'm like, they're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I'll talk to these people the rest of my life. Like, it's so sad to me to be all alone when you're older like that. And I'm determined not to be, but I know so many people deal with it. For some people, it's certainly inevitable, especially if you don't have a big family.
And my mom's the last one, her sister died when she was 21. Her brother just passed away. And I asked her if she would want to come to Jersey, not like to live with me right now, but like my brother, and we're both out here, and she was just like, nah. And I think a lifelong New Yorker. And I think also she owns her home. Like that's the place that she bought, that she worked for. And it's funny because speaking of this, I have noticed a lot of my fans this year that I picked up many fans across platforms, and my girlfriend and I joke about it, but half of my YouTube audience, if you're an agent or a manager, stop listening now. I'm about to mention a demographic you don't care about. 54 and over, half of my YouTube audience.
How do you know that?
They break it down in terms of demographics,
okay.
Like you can really splice the demographics pretty cool with Google. And I got so many emails from men and more women who were like in their 60s and 70s. One woman, 80. One woman, I talked her through how to subscribe to my YouTube because she said, my son sent me your video and now I'm watching all of them, but I can't figure out how to subscribe to your channel.
I've been there.
I thought to myself, not only are these people, because I think to myself, if you're 60, let's say, you might have seen Greg Giraldo in a comedy club when you were my age. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you might have a different sensibility that we dismiss in terms of Andrew Dice Clay was big when you were like 30.
Right.
So you might like traditional comedy more than an up and coming youngster. So your sensibilities and your sensitivities might actually, but it's not a demo you ever think of like, I've got to really win over the 60 and over crowd. But I'm 41. I'm not 20. So it's not that, but I think of that and I wish my mom could I don't really want to encourage her to get into social media, but I don't think it's a coincidence that I had a lot of older people looking forward to my videos and interacting with me almost like, hey, this is my chance to be in with a comedian. I like this comedy. Much better than some of the sensitive people who would tell me other things. I had a nice following among 55 and over. And I think maybe some of them were like my mom in some ways, because I had many gruff ones who would say the funniest emails. I'm sorry to ramble on, but the funniest emails I got were from a few different older women, probably because they reminded me of my mom a little bit, but they would be like so gruff with their praise. And it made me feel connected. I can't think of an exact example, but I remember making my girlfriend laugh with them where it would just be like, you don't have to write back. I'll probably be dead. Things like that where I would go like, oh man, I love this. Like, I hope if I go to some of these cities, I was joking, it's going to look like some sort of weird real sex segment from HBO where it's like 29-year-old bros and their 75-year-old grandmothers at the JL comedy show.
That's your demo.
I hope I meet some of them, because it was like, that was much more rewarding, because I felt like they actually got me better than some other people who might be a more, marketable demo.
Speaking of people who get you, lastly, I wanted to ask you, you did you interviewed Richard Marx, music legend and monster on Twitter. Richard Marx, he's a huge fan of yours. That was really funny. That must have been fun.
He has been extremely supportive and an excellent fan of mine. I mean, I've been a fan of his for decades, but that's been one of the cooler, fun experiences of this is building an online relationship with Richard Marx. And he has said I can be a guest at his show whenever he's in the area.
That's awesome.
So that's cool.
That's awesome.
No, he
really funny
I don't know
video.
what else to say. It's just, it's very,
he played
I
along
don't want
well.
to ever get cavalier with this. Like he's the type of person I will continue to just call him, hey, Richard Marx. I'm never going to feel comfortable going, your friends call you Richie? Cool. No, I'm going to be like, Richard Marx, you're here. Like, I'm sure he gets that all the time. Like, people call him that when they see him in a store. Because you don't just go, Rich. No, you're like Richard Marx. You are known as Richard Marx.
Now, he's been very bold on social media for the entire Trump era, and I love that.
And a sketch I wrote that I didn't want to tell him about, but that is for my sketch pilot, or just, if I ever get to make a sketch show, or if I just have to make an hour of sketches myself. One of the ones I've written is Richard Marx doing a recording session for a charity group comes, like they won the opportunity to watch him do a recording session. So you get to see him interacting and saying, I'm so glad to raise money for this charity. And he's singing his love songs. And then like his phone beeps and you see him enter this dark phase, like a Jekyll and Hyde. So when he's on Twitter, he's like, I will cut your dick off and murder you with it. Oh, hey kids. You ever hear the song Right Here Waiting? I wrote this for a special lady. Dun, 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 ding.
I'm in for that sketch too.
That's what your mom said when I fucked her in '88. Dun, 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 dun. So you get the vibe.
I'm there for that sketch.
Every chip I have would be pushed in to say, if I ever had something where I could actually get that made, I'd be like, Richard Marx, half of my show's budget is dedicated to flying you first class to film this.
That's why you can do it over Zoom. Let's make it easy. All right, go eat your dinner. It sounds delicious. And I appreciate you joining me here on a Sunday. It's always a great conversation.
It's broccoli, not asparagus.
That's different.
The pea will smell normal.
That's totally. I always I love when you realize that's why your urine smells the day after.
Am I dying? Oh, asparagus.
Oh, that's right. I had I feel like it's the only thing that does that. I love asparagus.
Isn't it weird? But asparagus is, I was just reading about it. Oh, no, actually, I was watching a YouTube advertisement. I am starting to patronize my own YouTube advertisements. I watch my own videos so much. And the guy was talking about asparagus being a great prebiotic food. I don't know.
Whatever.
But, yeah, whatever.
Enough with this biotics.
That huckster selling pills before my videos.
Thank you very much, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
This is awesome. Thanks for having me.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen, JL Cauvin. Thank you to Jason Meux and David Campbell as well for their contributions to the show. And that is all I've got for you. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the news segment. Let me know what you think of the interviews. Let me know what you would like to hear more of and less of. And support the podcast with a paid subscription. Go to patreon.com/PeteDominic or just go to the paid subscription link in the show notes. Don't forget to give the show a review and 5 stars on Apple Podcasts because it matters. Tell your friends and know that you're not alone. I love you. Reach out anytime and join us in the stand-up community where every Thursday night we meet for a virtual hang. Let me know who you'd like to join us as special guests there as well. That is it. Take us away, John Carroll.
They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand-up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in with other causes They knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up, got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up, people got the power. Stand up. Come on, 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 stand up.
And here now, famous Egyptian feminist who just passed away, Nawal al-Saadawi.
Feminism is not a Western invention. Feminism was not invented by American women, as many people think. No, feminism embedded in the culture and in the struggle of all women all over the world. We have to liberate women economically, socially, psychologically, physically, religiously. So our feminism, we called ourselves historical, that's the slogan of our group, historical socialist feminist. Because we studied history and we understood that the oppression of women is not specific of Egypt or Arab people. It is historical. It is everywhere, in every country. Women were rebelling in all religions, in India, in Egypt, under Hinduism, under Judaism, under Christianity or Islam. Women were fighting for their rights. And we call ourselves socialists because we are against class oppression. We are against capitalism because capitalism is linked to patriarchy. We are against patriarchy, not men. We are not against men. We are against patriarchy, the patriarchal system, the domination of men in religion, in economy, in culture, in everything, in science. That's why we call ourselves historical socialist feminists. And
this organization terrified the men in power, didn't it?
Terrified, yes, of course. It terrified them. That's why they banned it. And in fact, we were about to create a revolution because we had 40% men. We had 40, we were not all women.
Men were joining too.
We had 40% men and young men, very enthusiastic about these points.
Why were they joining? Why were men joining?
Because they felt that men are oppressed by patriarchy too.
Men are oppressed by patriarchy too. Nawal al-Saadawi, Egyptian author and women's rights icon, dies at 89. And that's all I've got for you, folks. I'll talk to you tomorrow right here on Stand Up. Seriously, that's it. The show's over. It's gonna end now. See, it's ending. Now it's ending. Love you. Bye.